plastics. That's another thing we do, because we do two types of statistics, right? The total like global trade in plastics. It's a lot of money. It's around 1.1 trillion dollars. So it's a lot. And non-plastics. Substitutes. What is non-plastic substitutes? Everything else other than plastics, right? It's cotton, paper, wood, glass, seaweed. So you can make materials with seaweed. There's a 286 products. That's around 500 billion dollars. So it's not that small. So it's around half of the trade of plastic. Because this, for example, includes metals, right? Metals are, and so we produce these statistics so we can see, for example, for each country, for Kenya, how much it exports of a specific type of plastic, let's say bags, or plastic waste. But waste should be recyclable waste.
Plastic bags in Kenya.
Like you can see, for example, how much Kenya is exporting to the world or importing from the world.
Plastic bags.
For example, for any of the here the plastics products trade of 1.1 trillion dollars. This represents around, I think it's 360 products. Like it's a lot of things: bags, straws, polymers like the flakes of plastics, cutlery. Those are the classic examples, but there are many other like films, like plastic films. Those are industrial products, and there are many, like 360 types of products traded in this system. This is around, I think, 280 types of products that we mapped, and together it makes 500 billion, 1.1 trillion dollars. This information is going to be in the study that my colleague is bringing to give to you, which gives a global view of the amount of plastic that is traded in the world. And we also have the database, so you can look at any country, like Tanzania, Kenya, Burundi. How much is it exporting to where and what kind of products, and also how much is it importing. It's good to have an idea of.
And so, what do you do with the textile waste in terms of coming up with the global standards and rules that can be a standard for the global value chain in terms of, you see now there's a growing concern with the health issues to do with the plastic textile waste.
The issue of plastics in textiles is that it's mixed, right? Especially a lot of fabrics are mixed polycotton, like cotton and polyester together. So it's hard to, they're pure cotton, they're pure natural fiber. There's blended fiber, very tricky, and there's pure polyester, so pure plastic textiles. A shirt, I think, is pure plastic. When it comes to standards for second-hand used clothes trade, my colleagues in UNEP are trying to produce a standard. Oh, this is another interesting. Oh, I forgot about that. That's about packaging, like how packaging. So if you buy a Coca-Cola or something, or a product, stickers such as "Recycle Me," "I am recyclable," or "I'm green packaging." These things mislead the consumer often. Like "Recycle Me," what does it mean? It doesn't help much. It doesn't. Just putting responsibility to the consumer. And there are calls, and the UN has a UN set of consumer protection guidelines since the 80s, but it has been updated in 1999 and 2015. It has guidelines on how labeling should be done, and labeling should be standardized also, because sometimes you produce something here from Senegal and you export it to Kenya, and then the Kenyans don't understand the symbol, what they mean. Was it recyclable? Is it biodegradable according to the Senegal Agency of Standards? So that needs to be harmonized. So we did a study on the packaging of products. That could be also interesting.
So what should it be if not Recycle Me, like the standard?
It should be. It should communicate what the product contains, If it's the type of plastics, but that's usually already communicated.
Mm.
Not always, but already, like with
Mm.
this kind of 1 through 7, like the recycled symbols. It should, for example, if it is biodegradable, that's the big thing. It should be based on a standard. You cannot say, oh, but it's biodegradable. Great, but which standard? From ISO, from the international standard, ISO, ESTM, or national standard like CABS in the case of Kenya. Is this based on? Okay, will it degrade if I leave it on the ground? Will it degrade only if I put it in a special machine that keeps it above 50 degrees? Those things need to be clear through, because otherwise you cannot really recover the materials. It might simply say degradable, but it doesn't degrade.
What about
Yeah,
chemicals inside? Should they make sure like it's level?
No, the chemicals, because there could be so many, right? That is usually more of a B2B or government to business relation. The government should, and I think there are already rules on that, set maximum threshold of certain chemicals, like the UV stabilizers, of how plastics will resist the light, or water repellency, and insecticides, like insect repellents, for example, that's for clothes people put sometimes. So that needs to be regulated, the threshold of how much it's safe for you to put in those packaging. And if it contains something that is harmful, it should of course also be labeled. There are many rules on that and standards, but it's not, it's often not the same across different markets.
Okay.
Just getting to the point back on clothes, Bernard, sorry.
Yeah, Bernard.
Okay, yes. So the UNEP is trying to come up with the guidelines on trades in second-hand clothes. A lot of it go to East Africa, East and West Africa. A lot of it goes to Pakistan as well. And the European Union is also coming up with this proposed standard or guidelines. The Joint Research Center of the EU on how to what should be exported, for example, and what should be put also in the EU market. We're not doing that in UNCTAD. We did something else. We looked at the markets of Kariako, Ilala in Tanzania. We looked at the big market in Kampala of second-hand clothes. Was in the market, big market there. I think 30,000 people are working that market. And looking at for the bales, so the clothes come in plastic bale, right? They used clothes through shipments, usually through Mombasa and there. Once you open a bale, the distributors, the sellers, how much of this bale can you sell, and in which categories, how much dollars per piece, to see if they were importing things that were useless, like waste, or if they were actually selling, and then you find buyers for most of the things. Also, to our surprise, we realized that the informal sellers, informal market there, because things are formal up to the importation. After that, it becomes an informal chain. But this informal chain is very efficient in clothes in general, that doesn't touch plastics. 97% of clothes are sold.
Because again, we have a lot of problem with the growing supply of the fashion industry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's just too many clothes.
Too many clothes.
That's true. The overall amount of clothes is debatable whether we need that, right? Both here and in Kenya, in my native Brazil, China, there is a systemic concern that we just have too many clothes. But whether there is exportation of waste, by the data we realized in Uganda and Tanzania markets where we looked at the ground, and I have the study I can share with you, that doesn't show that there's the importers importing waste. Because the importers tell us when we are paying $30,000 per container, why would you pay for waste? They're not stupid. They import things that can recycle. I think it's very useful also to have one, because it contains the highlight numbers of the latest numbers of trade in plastics in the world. And behind that, there's a database which you can always look at. If you're interested in Kenya, you can look at it. What Kenya is importing and exporting.
Just a follow-up
Because I was wondering, because you see, like there's in Europe, there's quite a lot a number of second-hand clothes are being sent to Africa, for example, and you see they call it circularity. So I'm really wondering what really happens to some of these clothes now when they are here.
When they are here, I mean,
When they are when now
when
they
they are-
reach
yeah, I
Africa.
mean, there is a general insufficiency of waste management capacity for multiple materials, like for plastics. 75% of all plastics leak, or are not leak, but they are not properly managed.
Yeah.
They're put in open dumps, or they burn, or they leak into nature. The same with clothes. Right? Once the clothes are circulating and they get old,
Yeah.
you patched a few times. Probably in Kenya you reuse them much more than in Europe. In Europe I think the average is 7 times. You buy, use 7 times, and then you throw away or you donate.
Yeah.
Most people think throw away. But then eventually everything, even us, right? We go to the cemetery. Everything reaches end of life. And when we reach end of life, if there is no waste management capacity, it will become a problem.
Just a follow-up question on what you're explaining about imports of waste. Do you mean that governments agree to import the plastics to, let's say, in Africa?
Imports of plastic waste.
Yeah.
But plastic waste today is different than it was from plastic waste before 2017. Because after China said no more wasting plastic recyclable, they call it recyclable plastic. But China closed the door to that 2017, and in 2019, the Basel Convention adopted, which is one of the international conventions, also based in Geneva, by the way, adopted a regulation or an amendment on trade in plastics, used plastics, plastic waste. So countries that are importing, so if I want to export plastic waste to Kenya, the Kenyan authorities need to, or the Kenyan importer needs to ask permission from the government of Kenya to inform me, the exporter, that it's okay to send the shipments. So this is called prior informed consent, and this is complicated. You can export without that mechanism, but you have to prove through certification that your shipment is clean. This is only pure PET, like flakes, but that's useful. That's money. That's like $600, $700, $800 a ton of PET flake. So the trade, the total trade in plastics is $1.1 trillion. Total trade in wastes, in plastic waste, recyclable plastics, I don't think it's even 3 billion. It's 0.3%. Very small today. So the trade in plastic waste is a small, formal, official trade in plastic. But of course there might be informal trade on plastic and recyclable plastics, especially through land borders. That can happen, of course.
Speaking of the total cost, there's a study that was released, I think on Monday. I did a story recently, and I've just realized that the cost of health on plastic, the impact it costs the world about $1.5 trillion, which is even higher than the 1.1 trillion. And the scientist was telling us that it's actually an underestimation because they focused on just 3 chemicals.
Yeah, this is not a cost, this is trade. This is how much people are exporting of plastics. Costs. I don't. The science on the health impacts of plastics is evolving. There is this thing of plastics in agriculture that becomes microplastics, enter the plants, we eat the plants and gets to our body. There is this thing of breathing air that contains plastics, like the tires of the cars. They generate a plastic, synthetic rubber, which is a kind of plastic, dust that we breathe, fish as well, animals that we eat. So the best reference for the impacts of plastics on health, I think, is the Lancet that was just issued, and
that's the study I'm referring to.
The Minderoo Monaco Commission for Plastics and Health. They are both also here in negotiations. But we have looked a bit at the issue of health, even including Kenya. Now we look at the case of the flip-floppy project in Lamu, and we looked at for every 10 For every 1,000 tons of plastics that you avoid going to nature, how many years of life people live more? So we calculated that.
Oh,
And
there's
for-
that report?
Yeah, I have that report.
Yeah, I think, and then on
I'll,
that,
I'll share it here.
on that, I think the project by Flipflop, because here, like they collect quite a good number of textile clothing within especially the archipelago areas. So they get quite a lot of textile waste from there.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, like, what do you think of the maybe international something in the international EPR on textile? Because if it flows internationally, so what can we do? Like, try to maybe.
That could be. I mean, if the people don't game the system, right, or just to trade the EPR credits instead of trading the clothes.
Yeah.
There's some risk, but it would be great if it worked. The thing is that EPR, every successful EPR you see is national. It doesn't cross the border.
Yeah.
So once you buy a computer here in Switzerland, you pay a fee for waste management, and once it's sold to or given by Africa 21 to a talented journalist in Zanzibar, the EPR fee doesn't go to Tanzania or to other countries to compensate the end of life management recycling of the computer. That's a problem. That doesn't happen with clothes either. So once the clothes are sold, it becomes a problem of the municipality that receives the end of life clothes to deal with. That's something that can and should be discussed, but it doesn't exist yet.
Because there is also the issue of international flow here.
Yeah, absolutely. We see it's a huge international flow of plastics, of clothes. So
Are you able to talk a bit about this, because I've just been reading it?
yeah.
And the solution is in traditional knowledge, and coming from Kenya, most homes, like in the village, they use something called mutungi. It's like a pot.
Yep.
It's made of sort of ceramic, soil. That is something that they use. But now that is not something you can carry outside.
Mutungi ni mali.
Kama hii hapa. Yeah, so how are you going to reduce single-use plastic, because this is something that actually stays in the home. It cannot be carried outside.
Yeah.
Because outside the home, people are still going to use the papers or the bottles.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not a 100% solution or replacement of bottles, because it doesn't give you the mobility, right? You're not going to carry a heavy clay pot with you. But if you have one in every home, one in every business, and you have a glass ceramic thing that you can drink, you don't need to carry so many bottles and fits it all around. Like imagine walking in a shopping mall, you have the fountain, water fountain. You just can drink there. And there are other ways of delivering water without bottles or without sachets. And yes, this is a traditional one. It can be made better. It can have coatings with a silver that kills bacteria, with an active coal in the middle to make more efficient in the filtration. But we need to think about the function that we are delivering. We're delivering food. How do we deliver food? It needs to be packaged into other things. It can be delivered in a ceramic plate like we've been doing for thousands of years. But everything. One thing that is interesting: everything that you reuse. People talk a lot about reuse here. We should reuse our things instead of single-use plastics. But everything you reuse, essentially, you need to wash, right? To use again and again. So your water system needs to be clean. If you have unsafe water, systems of reuse don't work well. So the dependency of single-use plastic is also a consequence of bad sanitation. So that's I think we should look more at that connection. Right? Improving sanitation allows you to get away from single-use plastics, because people also trust more, for example, their water. The floppy one in Lamo, and look at if those projects are recycling, deviating plastics, transforming plastics into boats like the flip-floppy is for furniture, they're not going to the nature, right? So and since they're not going to the nature and not because when the plastics go to nature or they leak around, they have two effects. They damage biodiversity. they cause kill turtles, complicate the bacteria, the function of bacteria in the soil, and that can make the soil less fertile for agriculture. Put chemicals of concern in the soil, because plastics contain chemicals. Like imagine a pesticide bottle of plastic going there. So it affects nature and biodiversity, and affects the human health. And the human health is through increasing the burden of disease, becoming a pot for a mosquito to put malaria mosquito egg there, example, is through the chemicals of concern that could, when people pick that and stays exposed, the bats goes there and brings to people's home, so it increases the exposure to chemicals. But also, one thing that we didn't think about is that producing plastics is like producing fossil fuels, like carbon. Eventually, if these things are burned, they emit CO2, increase the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, accelerate climate change, and climate change reduces the capability of agriculture, that makes the land drier, so they make less water available, and that indirectly also affects the life expectancy of people. So there are a lot of pathways that plastic pollution affect nature and affect humans. We, in this study that we're going to send to you, only look at the pathway that affect humans to make people wake up.
Okay.
About the words on that topic.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all.
Yeah.